March 3, 1952, 2:17 a.m. Jimmy the Rat DeLuca watched the cigarette truck pull into the loading dock behind Palisades Warehouse in Fort Lee, New Jersey. A Mac B series, painted dark green, loaded with 50,000 cartons of Lucky Strikes fresh off the boat from North Carolina. Street value, $100. And if you like this video, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. $80,000. Enough money to change a small-time thief's life forever. What Jimmy didn't know, what the driver hadn't bothered to mention, was whose cigarettes he was stealing. The truck belonged to Albert Anastasia. In 1952, Albert Anastasia was the most feared man in New York. They called him the Lord High Executioner, the Mad Hatter, the man who turned Murder Incorporated from a concept into a corporation. He didn't just kill people. He industrialized murder, made it efficient, profitable, untraceable. By the early 50s, Anastasia controlled the Brooklyn waterfront through the International Longshoremen's Association. Every ship that docked, every cargo container that moved, every truck that rolled off those piers paid tribute to Albert Anastasia, including cigarette shipments. Cigarettes were gold in 1952. Federal taxes had just increased from 7 cents to 8 cents per pack, creating a massive black market. Hijack a truck of legitimate cigarettes, sell them without tax stamps, and you could triple your money overnight. The racket was so profitable that every mob family in New York wanted a piece. But the waterfront belonged to Anastasia, which meant the cigarettes belonged to Anastasia, which meant touching them without permission was suicide. Jimmy DeLuca either didn't know this or didn't care. Jimmy was 26 years old, a small-time car thief from Hoboken who'd done 2 stretches in Railway State Prison for boosting Chevrolets. He wasn't connected, wasn't made, wasn't even associated with any crew. He was a lone wolf, and in the New York underworld of 1952, lone wolves didn't survive long. But Jimmy was desperate. His gambling debts had reached $8,000 money he owed to a bookmaker named Sal Vertucci, who worked for the Genovese family. Sal had given Jimmy until March 15th to pay. After that, Sal promised, they'd find Jimmy floating in the Hackensack River. So when Jimmy's cousin Paulie, who worked as a night loader at Palisades Warehouse, mentioned the cigarette truck, Jimmy saw salvation. 1 truck, 1 night, problem solved. Paulie had given him the details. The truck would arrive at 2 a.m. The driver, a guy named Eddie Moss, would park in the loading dock, fill out paperwork in the office, and leave the truck unattended for 20 minutes. The keys would be in the ignition. Standard procedure. Eddie had been making this run for 3 years. Nothing ever happened. Fort Lee was a quiet town. Jimmy had recruited 2 guys for the job, Tommy Bianchi, a heroin addict who'd steal anything for $50, and Vincent "Vinny Ears" Calabrese, who got his nickname from a childhood accident involving a firecracker and poor judgment. Neither Tommy nor Vinny knew whose truck they were stealing. And if you like this video, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Jimmy had told them it was an independent operation, unconnected merchandise. They believed him because they wanted to believe him, because 180,000 split 3 ways was 60,000 each, and men will convince themselves of anything for that kind of money. At 2:19 a.m., Eddie Moss walked into the warehouse office with his clipboard. Jimmy watched from across the street, crouched behind a 1949 Plymouth. He gave Eddie 2 minutes to get settled, then motioned to Tommy and Vinny. The 3 men moved quickly across the loading dock. The truck was exactly where Paulie said it would be. Engine off, keys in the ignition, 50,000 cartons of Lucky Strikes in the cargo bay. Jimmy climbed into the driver's seat. The engine turned over smoothly. Tommy and Vinny jumped in the passenger side, and just like that, they were driving away with Albert Anastasia's cigarettes. March 3, 1952, 2:47 a.m. Eddie Moss walked out of the warehouse office, paperwork complete, ready to continue his route to a distribution center in the Bronx. He stopped cold when he saw the empty loading dock. For exactly 5 seconds, Eddie's brain refused to process what his eyes were seeing. Then, reality hit like a sledgehammer. The truck was gone. His truck. Anastasia's truck. Eddie's hands started shaking so badly he dropped his clipboard. Eddie knew what this meant. In the world he worked in, losing a truck full of merchandise wasn't a fireable offense. It was a death sentence. Eddie wasn't just a driver. He was a trusted earner in Anastasia's organization, a man who'd been moving product for 7 years without incident. Anastasia had given him responsibility, which in mob terms meant Anastasia expected perfection. There were no excuses, no explanations, no, it wasn't my fault. You lost the product, you paid with your life. Eddie ran to the warehouse phone and dialed a number he'd been given for emergencies. A voice answered on the second ring. "Yeah. It's Eddie Moss, we got a problem. The cigarette truck, it's gone, stolen, right out of the loading dock." Silence on the other end. Then, "Stay there, don't move, don't call nobody else, understand?" "Yeah, I understand." Eddie hung up and lit a cigarette with trembling hands. He'd just called Anthony Tough Tony Anastasio, Albert's younger brother and the underboss of the family. If anyone could fix this, it was Tough Tony. If anyone would kill him for losing the truck, it was also Tough Tony. Eddie smoked 3 cigarettes in 6 minutes, waiting. Tough Tony arrived 30 minutes later in a black Cadillac with 2 men Eddie didn't recognize. Tony was shorter than his brother Albert, but carried the same air of barely contained violence. He walked onto the loading dock, looked at the empty space where the truck should have been, and turned to Eddie. "Tell me exactly what happened, every detail." Eddie explained the timeline. Truck arrived at 2 a.m. He went inside to do paperwork. At 2:19, came out at 2:47. Truck was gone. Standard procedure, same as always. Tony listened without interrupting. When Eddie finished, Tony asked one question. "Who knew the truck was coming tonight?" Eddie thought carefully. "Me, the dispatcher at the shipping company, the warehouse supervisor, and my cousin Paulie. He works the night shift here, helps with loading sometimes." "Paulie got a last name?" "DeLuca. Paulie DeLuca." Tony turned to one of his men. "Find Paulie DeLuca. Bring him to the social club. Don't hurt him, just bring him." The man nodded and left. Tony looked back at Eddie. "You're going to wait here. If that truck comes back in the next hour, you're going to call me immediately. If it doesn't come back, you're still going to call me. Either way, don't leave this dock. Understand?" Eddie nodded. He understood perfectly. He was alive for now, but his future depended entirely on whether they found that truck. By 4:30 a.m., Paulie DeLuca was sitting in a back room of the Longshore Social Club on Columbia Street in Brooklyn. The room had no windows, 1 door, and 3 men who all looked like they enjoyed their work too much. Tough Tony sat across from Paulie at a metal table. "Paulie, we're going to have a conversation. How this conversation goes depends on you. Your cousin Jimmy, where would he take a truck full of cigarettes?" Paulie's face went white. "Jimmy? What are you talking about? I don't know nothing about no truck." Tony leaned forward. "Paulie, I'm going to explain something to you. That truck that went missing tonight from Palisades warehouse where you work contained property belonging to my brother Albert. Now, either you're the unluckiest man in New Jersey or you're involved. Which is it?" Paulie started sweating. "I swear to God, Tony, I didn't know it was Mr. Anastasia's truck. Jimmy asked me about the delivery schedule, said he was doing an independent job, just some cigarettes, nobody would care. I didn't know, I swear I didn't." "No," Tony sat back. "But you do know where Jimmy would take the truck." Paulie hesitated. Giving up his cousin meant Jimmy was dead, but not giving up his cousin meant Paulie was dead. In the moral mathematics of survival, the equation was simple. Jimmy's got a garage, out in Kearney, 447 Schuyler Avenue. It's abandoned, used to be a repair shop. That's where he takes cars he boosts. He's probably there now, unloading." Tony stood up. "You're going to stay here until we confirm that. If you're lying, if we go to Kearney and there's nothing there, we're going to come back and have a different kind of conversation. If you're telling the truth, we're going to forget we ever met. Understood?" "Understood." March 3rd, 1952, 5:43 a.m. Jimmy DeLuca had never felt better in his life. The garage in Kearney was perfect, isolated, no neighbors, thick walls. He'd backed the truck inside 40 minutes ago, and now he and Tommy and Vinny were counting cartons by flashlight. And if you like this video, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. 50,000 cartons of Lucky Strikes, each one worth $360 retail. Jimmy had already called a fence he knew in Newark, a guy named Morris who moved stolen goods through pawn shops and discount stores. Morris said he could move 10,000 cartons immediately at $2 per carton. That was 20,000 cash, enough for Jimmy to pay Sal Vertucci and still have money left over. The rest of the cigarettes could be sold slowly over the next month. Tommy was stacking cartons in the corner, grinning like an idiot. Jimmy, this is the biggest score I ever seen. We're rich. We're actually rich. Vinny was less enthusiastic. I don't know, Jimmy. This feels too easy. Nobody leaves a truck like this just sitting there unless something's wrong. Nothing's wrong, Jimmy said. The driver probably didn't even notice until an hour after we took it. By the time they report it to the cops, we'll have half these cigarettes sold and the truck ditched in the Meadowlands. Stop worrying. But Vinny couldn't stop worrying because, unlike Jimmy, Vinny had been around the New York underworld long enough to know that nothing was ever easy. If a truck full of valuable merchandise was left unguarded, there was a reason. Either it was a setup, or it belonged to someone so powerful that nobody would dare touch it. Vinny had a bad feeling in his stomach, the kind of feeling that had kept him alive through 3 decades of petty crime. Jimmy, whose truck was this? You never said. Does it matter? It's our truck now. That's when they heard the cars, 2 vehicles pulling up fast outside the garage, doors opening, footsteps, multiple people. Jimmy felt his heart drop into his stomach. He looked at Tommy and Vinny. Both had gone pale. Before any of them could move, the garage door exploded inward. 6 men walked in, and Jimmy recognized the one in front immediately. Tough Tony Anastasia, which meant the truck belonged to Albert Anastasia, which meant Jimmy DeLuca was a dead man. Tony walked slowly around the truck, inspecting it, touching the hood like he was greeting an old friend. Then he turned to Jimmy. You know who I am? Jimmy's voice cracked. Yeah, I know who you are. You know whose cigarettes these are? I didn't know. I swear I didn't know they were Mr. Anastasia's. I thought they were independent, unconnected. I never would have touched them if I knew. Tony nodded thoughtfully. See, that's the problem with guys like you. You don't think. You see something valuable, you take it, and you never ask the important questions. Like, who owns it? Like what happens when they come looking for it? Tony gestured to his men. They grabbed Tommy and Vinny, dragged them outside. Jimmy heard a car trunk open, heard Tommy begging, heard the trunk slam shut. Then silence. Tony looked at Jimmy. Those two, they're small time. They'll spend a week in the trunk of a car parked in a junkyard in Staten Island. Maybe someone finds them, maybe they don't. But you're different. You're the organizer. You knew where the truck was. You planned this, which means you get special attention. Jimmy's legs gave out. He collapsed to his knees. Please, Mr. Anastasio, I'll do anything. I got money, I can pay you back. Just, please don't kill me. How much money you got? 8,000. I owe it to a bookmaker, but I can get it. I can pay you back. Tony laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. 8,000? Kid, this truck is worth 180,000. You think 8,000 makes this right? He shook his head. No, money don't fix this. This is about respect. This is about making sure every other small-time thief in New Jersey knows what happens when you steal from Albert Anastasia. March 4th, 1952, 6:22 a.m. Detective Michael Brennan of the Fort Lee Police Department got the call about a body at the Palisades Amusement Park parking lot. Not unusual. The park was closed for winter, and the empty parking lot had become a dumping ground for all kinds of trouble. Brennan had found stolen cars. There, drug deals gone wrong, even a body once before. But this one was different. The 1949 Chrysler Windsor sat in the far corner of the lot, trunk slightly open. Brennan approached carefully, hand near his service revolver. He opened the trunk fully and immediately stepped back. Jimmy DeLuca was inside, tied with rope, gagged with a cloth, alive but barely. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. He'd been beaten professionally, methodically, enough to hurt, not enough to kill. Brennan called for an ambulance, then crouched down next to the trunk. Can you hear me? Blink if you can hear me. Jimmy blinked. Brennan removed the gag carefully. Who did this to you? Jimmy's voice was a whisper. Anastasia. Albert Anastasia. Jimmy nodded. Brennan's expression changed. If Anastasia was involved, this wasn't a police matter anymore. This was mob business, and mob business had its own rules. What did you do? Stole his cigarettes, didn't know they were his, didn't know. And if you like this video, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. The ambulance arrived 10 minutes later. They loaded Jimmy onto a stretcher, took him to Englewood Hospital. Brennan filed a report, noting the victim's statement about Anastasia, knowing nothing would come of it. In 1952, you didn't arrest men like Albert Anastasia based on the word of a small-time thief. You especially didn't arrest them when the thief was clearly left alive as a message, because that's what this was. A message. Jimmy DeLuca spent 3 days in the hospital. Broken ribs, fractured jaw, internal bruising. The doctor said he was lucky to be alive. Jimmy didn't feel lucky. On the 4th day, Tough Tony visited him. Walked right into the hospital room like he owned it, closed the door, sat down in the chair next to the bed. "How you feeling, Jimmy?" Jimmy couldn't speak clearly through the wired jaw. Tony continued, "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to recover. Then you're going to leave New Jersey. I don't care where you go. California, Florida, Canada. You're going to disappear, and you're never going to come back. You're never going to talk about this. You're never going to mention my brother's name. You understand?" Jimmy nodded. Tony stood up. "And Jimmy, you should know, your cousin Paulie, he's fine. We didn't touch him. He was honest with us, told us where you were, and we appreciate honesty. But you tried to steal from us, so you got what you deserved. Consider yourself lucky you're breathing." Tony walked to the door, then paused. "One more thing. That bookmaker you owe money to, Sal Vertucci, your debt's been paid. We bought it. So now you don't owe Sal nothing. You owe us. And the way you pay us back is by disappearing and never causing problems again. That's the deal." Jimmy DeLuca left New Jersey 2 weeks later. The last anyone heard, he was working at a gas station in Tucson, Arizona, using a different name. He never returned to New York. Tommy Bianchi and Vinnie Ears were found 3 days after the theft, locked in a car trunk in Oway, Staten Island junkyard, dehydrated and traumatized but alive. Both left town immediately after being released. The cigarette truck was returned to Palisades warehouse undamaged, all 50,000 cartons accounted for. Word of the incident spread through the New York underworld within days. The story became legend. A small-time thief stole Albert Anastasia's cigarettes and lived to tell about it. But the way he lived, and if you like this video, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Lived, beaten and broken, tied in a trunk and left as a warning. That became the real lesson. Anastasia didn't always kill. Sometimes he did something worse. He let you live with the consequences, let you walk around as a reminder of what happened when you crossed him. In 1952, the Brooklyn waterfront moved $3 billion worth of cargo annually. After the cigarette truck incident, hijackings in Anastasia's territory dropped by 60%. Nobody wanted to be the next Jimmy DeLuca, tied in a trunk, lucky to be breathing. The message was clear. You could steal from anyone in New York. But you didn't steal from Albert Anastasia. Not if you wanted to keep walking.